Hi, welcome back to the Dreaming and Doing podcast. I am super excited to be talking with our guest today. We are talking with Patrick Casale, who is a licensed clinical mental health and addictions therapist in Asheville, North Carolina. He is the owner of All Things Private Practice and Resilient Mind Counseling. He is also an international retreat host, and his motto is doubt yourself and do it anyway, which I think is absolutely perfect for our show. So welcome, Patrick, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Melissa. I appreciate it.
Would you talk a little bit about your motto, doubt yourself and do it anyway, and where that came from?
Yeah. So I've been a private practice and group practice therapist for almost 7 years now, and I've been the founder and owner of All Things Private Practice for about 4. And I think that the motto comes from just the fact that for so long I kept myself really small and had so much imposter syndrome and self-doubt and perfectionism and insecurity about my capabilities and whether or not my ideas were actually possible to kind of been brought out into the world. And the more I gained confidence over the last couple of years, the more I started taking more risks, the more I started stepping into things that probably felt pretty uncomfortable at first, to realize like the more you do that, the more you grow, the more risks you take, the more you pursue these goals and these passions, the more likely they are to come to life, instead of just like living inside of your head and convincing yourself that they're better suited for somebody else, or it's not the one who's going to be able to bring them to life because you don't have skill set A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah, I think that so many people are going to be able to relate to so many pieces of what you just said there. On the podcast, we're going to be talking about dreaming and doing. It is the start of the new year when we're recording here, so a lot of people are dreaming about the year ahead and what is possible. But I think anytime we are starting to dream about something, sometimes those doubts do pop up. What are some ways that you've managed to overcome your self-doubts, and what are some things that other people might be able to do for themselves if they're experiencing doubt or questioning, is this something I am capable of?
I believe in imperfect action, so kind of building the plane as you fly it, so to speak, because otherwise I think it just becomes too overwhelming. The perfectionism takes over, and it's like, can I launch my website? It's not perfect yet. Can I put this idea out to the world? I haven't fine-tuned everything. So I like to start backwards from a lot of people, and I think that feels counterintuitive when I'm doing coaching or talking to people about their processes. It's like, no, we don't have to research every single thing under the sun. Like, we just have to do it. And the reality is, once you put that idea into motion, it's almost like this actual accountability measure where it's like, okay, I put this idea out to the world. The world's still spinning, so my fear isn't as big as it was. But, bless you.
Thank you.
The reality is, I now have to take action on this thing. And I think that that's how I started my retreat business, honestly, was like, I was building All Things Private Practice, developing a reputation, my Facebook group, my podcast, etc. And things were going well, selling coaching programs and like building reputation. But my goal before All Things Private Practice was to start a travel coaching business, which was like, I'm going to help helpers step away, immerse themselves in culture, go to places that they wouldn't go as tourists, actually help them like work through some of the stuff that comes up when we step away from our businesses. And then COVID happened, so I had to pivot. And in 2021, I just put out on my Facebook page, I was like, hey, if I hosted a retreat in Ireland, who would come? And like 70 people were like, yeah, I'm in. So I'm like, oh crap, like I have to figure this out now. So hyperfixation, go down the rabbit hole of like, find the venue, find the location, book it, figure it out. But I booked the venue, I booked the dates before having a sales page up. I booked the venue and all the dates before selling a single spot, which may feel counterintuitive to people, but that was the only way I was ever going to work out of the whole like, if I build it, will they come situation to like, if I build it, they will come situation. So I think taking action on the idea is so important, even if it's just a baby step, because otherwise it just lives in your head. And honestly, it becomes too overwhelming to ever pursue.
Yeah. I think that that's so important because I think a lot of times we think that when we think about people who are pursuing their dreams, and I think some people, Patrick would say, like, Patrick has literally created his dream job or a dream or a job that a lot of people would be like, that is the dream job. And I don't know if it feels that way.
I was just having this conversation with someone about how I feel sometimes like I'm the architect of my own demise. I'm like, I am going to be in 5 countries over the next 5 months, hosting 4 different retreats, speaking at 2 conferences. Like, it feels cool on one hand to say, like, this is where my career has taken me because I'll be in Norway, Ireland, Scotland, Spain, and Greece up until June. But there is a part of me that is like, wow, June 3rd can't come soon enough. Can't wait for that day for this to be over. And it's not that I don't enjoy it, or that I don't find it unbelievably fulfilling. It's just the reality that, like, as an autistic ADHD human, my nervous system, my sensory system gets dysregulated very easily. So traveling, airports, people, hosting, attending to, it's a lot. So I think it's a wonderful thing. I don't think when I was in grad school in 2015, I ever thought I would be talking about this stuff. I didn't even know it was possible, but I think in our profession, we can't see the forest for the trees a lot of the time because we don't have any business training for the most part. And then we're like, the only thing I can do in this profession is like private practice or community mental health. That's it. There are no other options. And that's just simply not the reality.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's a really important piece for people as well, because I think sometimes when we see people who are doing the things that we want them to do, or when we think about people, even in history, who are brave or courageous, I think we have this idea that they must have felt brave, or they must have felt courageous, or that it must feel great. And I think the reality is that we can take action even when we're afraid or even when it's imperfect. And I think that that's what you're saying, is sometimes you just need to take the action, and taking the action outwardly to other people might look really great and fantastic. But as we're taking it, we have our own internal experiences as we do so.
Oh, totally. I mean, social media is one of those things where everything can look really glamorous and really easy, and it can make you feel like crap if you're like, how come it's not so easy for me? That's why I always talk about the hard stuff on my social media page, because I think it's important to highlight both. But I know for me, like, I do Ireland every year on an annual basis during St. Patrick's Day because I think it's just cool to bring people to like an old medieval forgotten about village in the middle of nowhere in Ireland and do all this cool stuff. But what ends up happening is, like, I always ask people, like, is this the first time out of the country? And is this the first time traveling solo? And a lot of hands go up. And a lot of
Wow.
people are like, that in itself is a risk, right? Like, taking that risk, purchasing that spot for X amount of money, getting on that plane, getting the passport, navigating the airports, navigating whatever happens along the way. Those things, those little moments and decisions are the catalysts to the creation of something bigger. And it allows you to kind of say, I'm more resilient than I thought I was. I'm more courageous than I thought I was. I am willing to take risks. I am willing to invest in my business. I am willing to step out of my comfort zone. Those things, when you're doing that in like a communal setting, because my retreats are kind of like intimate incubators, it's amazing how the energy becomes very contagious. And I love witnessing that.
Yes. And I'm so glad to hear that so many of the people who sign up are first time travelers or first time having an international experience. I think that that's so exciting. And I'm wondering, I mean, you clearly love travel. You wouldn't be doing this if you didn't. And, like you said, your initial intention was to take people to places that were off the beaten path where they wouldn't be able to go otherwise and have an immersive experience. What is it that you personally have loved about travel or found it to be so transformative?
I think it's like kind of the excitement slash simultaneous messy factor that comes with traveling, of like, it's exciting. We kind of romanticize, right? In our culture, we're like, okay, got to get through the next 60 days, then I get to go away. Um, but what I love is new culture, meeting people. I love talking to people. Friends of mine and colleagues of mine will joke like that I talk to everybody when we're traveling, and I get to know like people at the bar, people in the restaurants, tour guides, local business owners. That for me feels really powerful because For example, I keep going back to Ireland, but it's on my mind right now. And year one, I was like looking for a coffee shop in the village we're going to. I'm like, man, we can't just serve like crappy Irish coffee to people every day. That will suck. And I ended up finding this like coffee food truck that had just opened up during COVID. It was like a husband and wife, small business, small town, middle of nowhere. And I DM'd them on Instagram and I was like, hey, if I ordered like 20 coffees every day, would you be able to fulfill that? And I could come pick it up. And they're like, absolutely. What ended up happening 3 years later is like, they message me, they listen to my podcast, we support each other. And for me, that is the epitome of travel. It's like learning about other people and how they live and eating their food and spending time with them and just experiencing a different way of living so that you can remember this stuff when you're having a hard time, when you're struggling, when you're feeling like really burnt out, because these are the things that we can anchor into to be like, oh, that was such a great time. That was such a great connection. Like, I love the fact that I was able to do this. So for me, that's what travel is always all about. And I know, just looking around my office, I have so much Anthony Bourdain stuff in here. And the way he traveled was really inspiring to me because it was always about like being curious, eating the food, meeting the people, learning about the customs, learning about the culture. And I think that is the most powerful thing that we can do. And it also makes the world feel a lot more connected.
Yeah, and you're making me think about this quote. I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but there was a Mark Twain quote that I loved. And years ago, well, 2018, 2019, I led a workshop in Mexico for mental health providers to do an immersive experience. And there was a quote from Mark Twain that really jumped out at me that says, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of earth all one's lifetime. And so just thinking about the things that we can learn as we travel, the culture, the food, the language, the relationships. And I think the thing that I love about what you're doing is, one, you are pursuing a dream of your own, right? Which is great in and of itself. But as you're doing that, other people get to pursue their dreams, right? Pursue their dreams of traveling that they might not do on their own. And even as business owners, I think we can be intentional about who we support, and even hearing you talk about you supporting these local business owners who are selling their coffee, right? Like that's kind of the beauty about how we can use our power, even in these small ways, to support people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why all of my events are always going to be in areas that you wouldn't typically go to or hear about, because that's where the real people are. Like, I could very easily say, let's have a retreat in Dublin during St. Patrick's Day. That would be a shit show. And also, like, it's not real. You're just surrounded by other people who are looking for similar experiences. So I would much rather take people off the beaten path, share their food, share customs, share conversation, and really get to know people and communities more intimately, because then I think we all become invested in one another's successes and we support one another. And I think that's the really powerful piece of all of this.
Yeah, no, you've led multiple retreats now, and I'm guessing that there are just some things that you see time and time again in terms of what elements of a retreat or travel have the biggest impact on the people who join your retreats. And I'm wondering, what is the transformation that you're seeing, or the big takeaways that people are getting by traveling and going on these retreats in community?
Yeah, I think community for sure. I mean, that's probably first and foremost, just spending time with, I keep my retreats small, so close to 20 people is about the max. And I allow people's partners to come and they can sit in on the conversations. And what I found is like, it gives their partners a different perspective about what their day to day looks like, how they can help them in their businesses. It's really cool to watch. And what I start to see, like, as a wallflower, because I'm not like someone who's up doing karaoke when we have karaoke or when we have people like coming and doing live music, I'm watching people, and I'm watching people like drop in and have fun, like just pure joy and just complete disregard of like the stressors in life.